Says Shulchan Aruch. So we say last time that even if a person uses technically a revit of water, that's the bare minimum for nitlat yadayim. Nonetheless, you should use a lot of water, because a lot of water is the shefa and parnasa, and is the recommended thing to do. Then we said you got to say bracha al nitilat yadayim on this, that we wash our hands, but it should be after the washing, before the drying. Even though the Ramah says you could say the blessing after the drying, since there's an argument, better not to say the blessing after drying. A person should try to say it after he washes, before the drying. Okay, and it's called over le'siyata, and it's considered you still did the blessing before the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is washing and drying. So it's still, since I didn't finish the mitzvah, they still have to dry, so it's still considered I did the blessing before the mitzvah. Okay, fine. It's interesting over here. Al-Chabra says, nevertheless, if you want to say the blessing before nitilat yadayim, because your hands are clean, your hands are not tameh, and they're not forbidden to bless with, you're allowed to. You're allowed to say the bracha before you even wash, but you shouldn't do this in front of for other people, because other people might make a mistake and understand the halacha wrong. Sometimes you have to wash hands for bread, right? And your hands are not tameh and they're not dirty. So technically you're allowed to say a bracha right now, right? Washing hands for bread. So what's the problem of saying nitilat yadayim before I wash? Over le'siyatan, I have to do all the brachot before the mitzvah. Oh, so the minhag is not to say the bracha before I wash. The minhag is to wash, then say bracha before I dry. Why? Because there'll be times where I can't say a bracha, my hands are tameh, and my hands are, I just went to the bathroom, or I touched something that's tameh, my hands are dirty, I can't say a blessing with my hands dirty like this. So therefore, minhag is to do it after I wash. But what if my hands are clean and not tameh? And I'm only washing because that's the mitzvah. So technically I could say a bracha right now, so what's stopping me? So he says technically you could, it's just you shouldn't do it in front of others, people that they might learn a mistake from this. Rather, but really, at the end of the day, everyone does the minhag to wash, to say bracha only after they wash. But it says it's not a sur. You can't say the guy did something wrong. You guys can't say it's bracha l'vatala if he did it before and his hands were clean.
But if you cannot do it after you dry them up, you wash and dry it up, you cannot say it. Why would you be able to say it even without washing it altogether? I don't understand.
Right. So you have to understand that. What does over le'siyatan mean? Before the mitzvah. Once you dry, you finish the mitzvah. Right? If you didn't start the mitzvah, that's called before. But once you dry, that's not considered before anymore. It's finished. It's over. Right?
But what's the mitzvah? Your hands are clean because you washed them already before, so the mitzvah was already done, no?
No, but every time I eat bread, even if my hands are clean, I have to wash. Why? Because I have to remind Kohanim.
Right.
Now, there's another aspect of if my hands are dirty, I'm not allowed to eat with dirty hands, right? That's another aspect of why the rabbis made us wash. Another aspect of why the rabbis made us wash is because they want us to eat with kedusha and tahara. When we eat, we have to remember we're not just zvere, like animals eating. We're eating for a higher purpose, with holiness. So all these reasons still apply, even if my hands are clean. The question is, so therefore maybe I should say bracha before, but minhag is say bracha after washing, before drying. If a person forgot to say bracha and nitilat yadayim before he dried his hands, and he already dried his hands, many poskim say he's not allowed to say a bracha. Safek brachot le'akel minhag Ashkenaz is to say bracha even after drying. So if you go to Ashkenazi house, many people do this: wash hands, then you give them towel. Baruch atah al nitilat yadayim. While they're drying, they say al nitilat yadayim, or they dried and then they say nitilat yadayim. But every Sephardic Jew, he's supposed to have dripping hands. Well, he says the bracha, and only then he dries his hands. Okay, fine. Good. So there's a custom. Some people have a custom saying, "Se'u yadechem kodesh, barchu et Hashem." What do? They wash hands. They put their hands up. They say, "Se'u yadechem kodesh, barchu et Hashem." Okay. He says, "Nachon yoter." However, it's better not to say this. However, those who have a minhag, you have what to rely on. You have to be careful to say the pasuk and to say the bracha before the drying. That way, the bracha is before the end of the mitzvah. Okay, what happens if a person does an action, hefsek, between the washing and the blessing? So you have to learn, you have to be careful not to speak between the washing of the hands and the blessing. But the avad, if you did hefsek with speaking, you're allowed to still say the bracha of anet aledayim. Sometimes I see people, they're talking, they have a conversation, and then they goes to wash their hands. Yeah, I know, I'm gonna see, or whatever, I'm gonna go and talk to you after, whatever. Talks. He's washing hands 3, and then he talks to his friend, 1 second, hold on, let me make bracha. And you're not supposed to do that. Once you finish the act of washing 3 times, you shouldn't talk. There should be no hefsek between the action of the mitzvah and the blessing.
But can you talk during the washing?
So technically, if you didn't finish the washing, you didn't finish the mitzvah. So technically, but once you finish the mitzvah, and then you want to make the bracha, you shouldn't. Imagine a guy, he takes talit like this, and he's about to say bracha. He says bracha, and before he puts on, he talks. That we say is a big problem. Here it's the opposite. Here we're doing the mitzvah first, and then we say bracha. So also you shouldn't have any hefsek in between. Chava. Oh, you gonna make bracha? Here we want to say amen. Amen. Okay, fine. But if you hear Dvarim Shekudusha, if you're washing and you hear Kaddish or you hear a Kedusha, you're allowed to answer the Kedusha after you wash the hands, even though you didn't say Anet Yadayim. Your hands will be wet. You'll say Anet Yadayim afterwards. Okay, good. י"ב ינגבם היטב קודם שיבצע שאוכל בלי ניגוב ידיים כאילו אוכל לחם טמא. Shulchan Aruch warns us you have to make sure to dry your hands well after Netilat Yadayim, because whoever eats or bread with wet hands is eating impure bread. As Gemara Sechet Sotah says this, he quotes a pasuk in Yechezkel. V'yomar Hashem kacha yochlu bnei Yisrael dachmam tameh begoyim. As this is the pasuk in Yechezkel, they ate without washing their hands. The Navi says it's considered tameh. They ate tameh bread. So be careful to dry your hands fully.
You purified your hands. It's probably talking about when you have minimum, no water.
Right.
Your hands cannot be tameh.
Right.
Wash them.
Right. Now, so what does this mean tameh? So Rashi says, Mishum de davar ma'ushu v'chashuv ketuma. Rashi says it's disgusting to eat that way, and it's considered as disgusting as tum'ah. So Rashi learns it's not literally tum'ah; it's as disgusting as tum'ah, right? But let's see over here. The Meiri says that when you have bread and it's a little bit soggy, it's disgusting. You know, it's like I'm trying to take a fresh piece of bread and it feels like some parts are wet. Why is some parts wet? It's weird. So that's what's that. And you break the bread with your wet hands and then you give it to somebody. That's what's considered disgusting. But according to the Ben Yonah learns not that it's considered like tameh, disgusting. It's literally tameh. He says when you eat without drying the hands, the wetness of the water makes it tameh. But the question is why? How does it make it tameh? We just wash the hands. That's what you're asking, right? So he says that you could say like this. You could say that when you how does food get tameh? It has to get wet first, right? It has to get wet first, and then it gets tameh. So now you're making it possible to get tameh. That's how you can understand, right? It's a machshir ha'ochel lekabel tumah, and it's able to get tumah. But I don't think it's necessarily you're making it tameh. Your hands are just clean. And so it must mean that you're making the bread able to get tumah, and that's what the Gemara means. Okay. So therefore, it's good. You have to be careful to dry your hands so you don't make the bread disgusting, according to Rashi. If you have no towel, sometimes this happens. You should know it's derech eretz. It's derech eretz to first always look for a towel before you do netilat yadayim. A lot of times you did netilat yadayim somebody's house or in the shul. You walk around like this, dripping everywhere, making everything wet on the floor. So the person has to first wait. Where's the towel? Okay, got a towel. Now we can wash. But let's say whatever somebody washed, there was no towel. Somebody came, took the last paper towels. You were stuck without paper towels. He says, let's say a guy washed his hands, no paper towels, and he waited until his hands dried by itself. That's considered like he dried his hands. and he's allowed to say hamotziin, to eat afterwards. Or let's say they make today these blowers. You put your hands in the blowers and then dry your hands with the air. Also, this is considered like you dried your hands. Mutar lechachila, to eat the bread now. Okay, fine. A person wants to know, what about drying my hands on my clothes? I couldn't find towels, I want to go like this. Can I go like this? Says the Chabura, Lo yinagev adam yadav bechaloko. A person should not dry his hands from nitlet yadayim on his body, on his clothing, because it leads to forgetfulness of his learning. This is from Orchot Haim, and this is his he has a girsah like this in Masechet Horayot. Okay. The Ben Ish Hai brings Kaf Haim Mishnah Berurah. Why is this connected to drying your hands on your body? So I guess that the concept is that we wanna wash our hands and purify ourselves, and the water is supposed to be also connection to the purification of the hands. So this water that we use to dry our hands, to clean our hands, we have to get rid of it. When you put it on your clothes, right? When you put it back on yourself, it's like you're asking for the tumah back. Chas v'shalom. It's like you're showing that you don't want to get rid of this water, and that the Orchot Chaim and the Poskim say that brings a person to forget his learning. You need to have holiness to remember your learning, but when you do this act, it makes your learning go away from you. Chas v'shalom. Even though your hands are not tameh, you have wash your hands 3 times. You're not tameh, but just the concept of what it represents. That's what makes it a person forget his learning. And it's proper not to do this with anybody's clothing, not just your clothing, anybody's clothing. You shouldn't take some kid's shirt. You shouldn't take somebody's pants and use it to dry your hands. Anybody's clothing, you should only use a towel. And it's interesting, Gemara, that says that the way that one of the Tanaim found who stole the cup from the Kiddush is he saw that this guy dried his hands in somebody else's clothing. So he said, from the fact he doesn't care to use somebody else's clothing to dry the hands, that means he's a guy who doesn't care about anything. He steals from other people. What are you saying?
So this means that this applies even when the clothing is not on the person.
Yeah. He says the clothing in general makes it makes a person forget. Yeah, what the clothing represents. Okay, Yud Gimel. המטביל ידיו יכול לאכול בלא ניגוב, והוא הדין נוטל ידיו בבת אחת, שופך עליהם רביעית בהם בבת אחת, או שנטל ידו אחת ושפך עליה רביעית, וכן שפך על חברתה. According to Shulchan Aruch, drying the hands is only when you use the revi'it of water literally, and you then you wash your hands one after the other. But if he dipped his hands in the river or mikveh, or he spilled on his hand the revi'it of water once, right? He spilled on each one revi'it. He doesn't need to technically dry his hands because that water is not tameh. So this is what we said before. Now it makes sense. Now it makes sense what we said before. Yeah. Right, now you could say that what we said before, that you ate impure bread, makes sense that now the bread is tameh because you only use revi'it of water, right? Less than revi'it of water. Or you could say this, that you make your forgetfulness of the clothing because you rub tameh water on your clothes. But if a person put more than revi'it of water on each hand, so then his hands are pure, and according to Shulchan Aruch, you don't even need to dry your hands. If you touch the bread, there's no problem of tumah, there's no problem of putting on your shirt. But many Achronim argue, and they say, no, you always have to dry your hands no matter what, and therefore that's why it's good to be machmir, even when you use a lot of water, to always go and dry your hands with a towel. Okay, good. Now Siman Kuf Nun Het. We're up to Siman Kuf Nun Tet. En notlin yadayim ele bekli. You're only allowed to wash your hands and yadayim with a vessel. Kol eklim ksherim. All vessels are kasher. Afilu kli galelim. Even if they used to take manure, they used to take fertilizer and heat it up and make it into a vessel. Even technically that is kasher. Kli avanim, stone, adama, or pottery, all these things, doesn't have to be metal specifically. All these things are kasher to use for netilat yadayim. Even though in the temple they used to use kior. Kior was metal or glass, the mirrors. But it's all vessels are kasher, wood, stone, glass, whatever may have you. Okay, good. But you have to have a vessel. Plastic. Mikar adin, you're allowed to use plastic cup, plastic vessel for nitlat yadayim, even if it's so flimsy, it's considered like one-time use. It's still considered a kli, and for nitlat yadayim, it's kasher. However, and according to all opinions, better that you should use an actual vessel. Then many people will reuse one after another. That way, and also beautify the mitzvah when you use a nice vessel. How much does it have to hold? It has to at least hold a revit. The ones we use today, very much so, have more than a revit, but they sell little ones. They're like this tall. They also hold more than a revit, and but the smallest one possible has to hold at least a revit to be kasher. We're going to learn next time about if it has a hole. If it has a hole, what makes it pasul, what makes it not, where does the hole have to be in order to still be able to be used, and then we're going to learn what do you do if you don't have a vessel. What are you going to do if you go on a trip and you don't have a vessel? They sell today these plastic rubber collapsible dime cups. That's good to buy and have on trips, but let's say you don't have one. Can you use a water bottle? What can I use? We'll see. It depends how small the mouth is. We'll see that next time. Baruch Naolam.